The pond was small. It was filled with turtles of all ages and sizes and colors, but it was small, and Turtle yearned deeply for something big. Oh, so often he would close his eyes and imagine that big things could actually happen to him. But then he'd open his eyes and he'd still be in the small, small pond. His family and friends couldn't understand him at all. "What's wrong with the pond?" they'd ask. "Everything you need is here. There's pond scum to eat, brackish water to drink, and us to talk with about it. What else could a turtle ever want? What's wrong with you?" Turtle never felt he fit in at the pond, but where else was there to go? And so he spent his time there in the morning mist, in the dappled afternoon sun, and under the stars at night, yearning deeply that big things could actually happen to him. One day, as he sat discontentedly chewing his brackishly flavored pond scum and yearning deeply, a tiny little bird landed right on his shell. The audacity! Turtle slowly turned his head all the way round and politely said, "Hello?" Well, the little bird leapt 3 feet in the air and left a puff of pin feathers, so startled was he. "I had no idea rocks could talk," he exclaimed, "or that they had such ugly little heads." "I am not a rock," said Turtle. "I am a turtle." The little bird huffily replied, "Well, we don't have those in the big forest." Suddenly excited, Turtle asked, "What is the big forest?" "If you must know," pipped the little bird haughtily, "it's the place where all the big things happen, about a half mile in that direction. And I'm going back there right now, because there's no little ugly talking rocks in the big forest." As the little bird took off, Turtle watched carefully, then began slowly plodding, deliberately, 1 foot then the next, taking his time in the direction of the big forest. And as he plodded, he closed his eyes because he just knew that big things were going to actually happen to him. A week and a half later, he arrived at the gates to the big forest, where he was greeted by Lion. "Welcome to the big forest," Lion bellowed. "As mayor, it is my job to welcome all travelers at the gate. Consider yourself welcomed, little, ugly rock." "I am not a rock, I'm a turtle." Yes, be that as it may, I must take my leave now. You see, I am exceedingly important, and as such, have a lot of exceedingly important items to attend to, none of which are you. Good day, ugly little rock." And with that, Lion left, and Turtle slowly and deliberately plodded through the gates to the big forest, 1 foot then the next, taking his time, and he closed his eyes, yearning deeply that big things would happen to him quite soon. Not long after, Turtle heard a voice calling to him from above. "Hello! Hello there, little walking rock." Turtle slowly turned his gaze upwards and saw that it was Owl addressing him. As their eyes met, Owl exclaimed, "Oh, I had no idea that walking rocks had such ugly little heads." "I am a turtle," said Turtle. "Well, be that as it may, I must immediately be off to my books. You see, I am exceedingly wise, and as such have some exceedingly erudite epistemology to elucidate about my new discovery, ugly little walking rocks. And with that, Owl flew off. And Turtle slowly and deliberately plodded on, one foot, then the next, taking his time, and he closed his eyes, yearning deeply that big things happened to him quite soon. And so it went. Turtle met squirrel, robin, lizard, ox, and many others, but all of them were too distracted, too beautiful, too mysterious, too stoic, too whatever, to care about an ugly little rock. And everyone he met made him feel a little smaller, a little sadder, and a little less worthwhile. Nonetheless, he slowly and deliberately plodded on, one foot then the next, taking his time, and closed his eyes, yearning deeply that big things happened to him quite soon. Sometime later, Turtle heard a rustling in the underbrush. He saw a blur, then a flash, then with a whirling whistle of wind, Rabbit suddenly appeared before him. "Hello, I'm Rabbit," she said amiably. "Who are you?" "I am Turtle," he replied, taken somewhat aback. Yet, knowing what was surely coming next, he sadly continued, "I can see that you're very fast and probably must run off somewhere to go do, I don't know, fast things." Turtle turned and prepared to resume his plodding. But to his great surprise, Rabbit said, "Oh, but not at all. I'm so totally curious about you. Are you actually a rock? What's it like to be a rock? Are all rocks as slow as you? What do rocks eat for breakfast? How come your face is all pinchy like that? As a rock, how do you scratch that one spot that's almost impossible to reach in the middle of your back? Oh, okay, forget all that. Just tell me what you do best." Turtle was greatly surprised, not to mention fairly overwhelmed, since no one had ever asked him about himself before. He gave it some thought, then gave it more thought, then gave it most thought indeed, and at length he proudly proclaimed, "I take my time." Rabbit gazed at him in rapt wonder for a good long while, and finally blurted, "Wow, that's absolutely fascinating." And Turtle smiled. And so, the rest of the day, and the next, and the next, Rabbit and Turtle spent their time together in the morning mist, in the dappled afternoon sun, and under the stars at night. Rabbit showed Turtle all the excellent wonders and succulent secrets that the big forest held, and Turtle showed Rabbit how to take her time and actually enjoy them. And so they went, having many pleasant adventures together for quite some time. One day, Rabbit asked Turtle, "Why do you sit there sometimes with your eyes closed, looking so serious?" Turtle smiled sadly and shared his deepest yearning. "I am yearning deeply that big things will happen to me someday. I thought that here in the big forest they surely would. But even with all the excellent wonders and succulent secrets you've shown me, not one of them has turned out to be a big thing that happened to me." Rabbit gazed at him with that special way she had for a good long while, and then said, "Wait right here." She was gone in a puff of dust, and Turtle could hear her footbeats rapidly disappear into the distance. Yet, Just a few minutes later, with a twinkle in her eyes, Rabbit was calling back, "Follow me!" Later that day, they arrived at a little race course, complete with a finish line ribbon rippling in the breeze. For Rabbit, it probably would take mere moments to complete, but Turtle thought it long indeed. Turning to her good friend, Rabbit said merrily, "Okay, let's race." Turtle could not have been more surprised and was struck speechless by the challenge. Rabbit gently guided him to the starting line, then took her place beside him. Coyly, she turned to him and said, "Now, do that thing you always do, the thing you're best at. Promise me you'll slowly and deliberately plod on, one foot and then the next. Take your time, close your eyes, and yearn deeply that big things happen to you." Turtle nodded, did as directed, and closed his eyes. Then, when Rabbit excitedly yipped, "Ready, set, go!" he began plodding. Of course, with a puff of dust, Rabbit was gone, and Turtle heard her footbeats rapidly disappear into the distance. He thought she surely must have crossed the finish line already and be waiting for him. But he kept his word and continued plodding, eyes closed and hoping. Sometime later, as the finish line approached, or so Turtle approximated, he heard Rabbit footbeats behind him. "Go, Turtle, go!" yelled Rabbit from somewhere far back, and he felt the finish line tickle his nose. As the ribbon broke, he opened his eyes in spite of himself and was startled to find himself crossing the line alone, and was even more startled moments later when Rabbit came blazing up from behind, faster than he'd ever seen. She turned to him with a grin from ear to fuzzy ear, breathlessly blurting, "Look, a big thing just happened to you. Turtle beat Rabbit in a race. That's a big thing, all right. That's the kind of big thing they write stories about." Turtle took his time and slowly, deliberately considered what just occurred, one thought, then the next. He closed his eyes, and after a little while realized that a big thing did indeed just happen to him. He opened his eyes again and gazed at his friend Rabbit in a whole new way. In her, he had found someone who made time to spend with him, who valued everything about him in spite of all his drawbacks, and who would even help him to achieve his deepest yearning. He smiled more broadly than he'd ever thought he could smile, and with his heart more full than he ever thought it could be, he said to his good friend Rabbit, "Thank you. You are the most wonderful big thing that I could have ever yearned for." Bashfully, Rabbit smiled back. And from then on, they spent all their days together, in the morning mist, in the dappled afternoon sun, and under the stars at night.